You know when you're reading ancient records and you hit those long lists of names? It's so easy to just kind of gloss over them. But what if those names actually held the secret to an empire's rise and fall? Well, today, we're diving into the story of three really powerful tribes from east of the Jordan River. That's Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. And we're going to see how their family tree tells an incredible story of power, and then a devastating collapse.
This whole account really boils down to a single, timeless question. What happens when a nation, at the very peak of its power, forgets the foundation that got it there in the first place? Let's keep that question in the back of our minds as we go through their story.
So, our story kicks off with the firstborn Reuben. Now, in ancient cultures, being the firstborn son was everything. I mean, it was the golden ticket to inheritance, to leadership, to wealth. For Reuben, though, that legacy was anything but a sure thing.
And here's where the family drama really starts. The text tells us Reuben was the firstborn, but his rights were given away. So why? Well, it says he defiled his father's marriage bed, which was a profound, shocking act of family betrayal. That one move cost him his entire legacy. The birthright that should have been his was passed on to someone else.
But even with that setback, the tribe of Reuben established some seriously deep roots. You see, these lists of names in the records aren't just for bookkeeping. They're family trees. This one right here maps out a single lineage, tracing a line from a man named Joel down through 6 generations. It just goes to show you, these people were keenly aware of their own history and their identity.
And make no mistake, they were powerful. They settled in this huge area east of the Jordan called Gilead, a land so fertile that their livestock just multiplied and multiplied, grazing all the way to the edge of the desert. These guys weren't just a tribe. They were a real force to be reckoned with.
Okay, let's move on to their neighbors, who were every bit as formidable. Living right alongside Reuben were the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and the three of them together formed this powerful eastern front. The Gadites were super organized. They controlled a really strategic territory, from Bashan all the way to the rich pastures of Sharon, and they had a clear leadership structure with chiefs in charge. So they weren't just living next door to Reuben, they were powerful, strategic allies.
And then you had Manasseh. The records describe them with 2 very powerful words, numerous and brave. They were famous for their warriors and their respected family leaders. So when you put these 3 tribes together, you don't just have a population, you've got a kingdom in the making.
So, what happens when you combine the wealth of Reuben, the organization of Gad, and the warriors of Manasseh? You get an almost unstoppable military alliance.
Just look at that number. Together, the 3 tribes could field an army of almost 45,000 men. In the ancient world, that is a massive force. And we're not talking about conscripts here. These were trained soldiers ready for war.
And they were highly skilled. The source material is really clear that these men were trained for battle. They had mastered the key weapons of their day: the shield for defense, the sword for close combat, and the bow for deadly long-range attacks. These guys were professionals.
In a huge war against a rival group called the Hagrites, this alliance faced its biggest test. They won, but the record is very, very clear about how. This quote reveals that their victory came because they cried out to God and trusted in Him. Their true strength wasn't just their numbers or their skill, it was their faith.
And the results of that victory, they were staggering. Look at the spoils of war here. The wealth was just immense. Huge herds of livestock and 100,000 captives. At this moment, these tribes were at the absolute peak of their power and their influence.
But, as we know, stories of great power often contain the seeds of a great fall, and the very foundation that led them to victory would soon become the source of their complete undoing.
4 words that change everything. After all that success, the record states, simply, but they were unfaithful. It's this stark, dramatic turning point in their entire history.
So what does unfaithfulness actually mean here? Well, the text is explicit. They started worshiping the gods of the very people they had just conquered. Think about that for a second. The faith that secured their greatest victory was abandoned for the idols of their defeated enemies.
This slide lays out the whole tragic arc of their story. During the reign of Saul, they had their great military victory. Later, under King Jotham, their prosperous family lines were officially recorded. But then a foreign king appears on the scene, Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria.
The consequence of their unfaithfulness was swift and total. The text says the God of Israel stirred up the Assyrian king, who then just swept in, conquered the 3 tribes, and deported them from their land. They were taken into exile, scattered across foreign lands, where, as the record ominously concludes, they are to this day.
So what are we supposed to make of this ancient story of lineage, power, and collapse? It feels like it's more than just a historical record. It's a timeless cautionary tale.
Their journey is just one of these sharp, brutal contrasts. Reuben, the firstborn tribe, ends up exiled. The great warriors of Gad and Manasseh become captives. A nation built on trust becomes defined by unfaithfulness, and a story that began with a miraculous victory ends in total defeat.
And this brings us right back to our opening question. Their family trees were carefully recorded, but their nation was erased from the map. Their story of victory ended in a permanent exile. So the question they leave for us is this: what matters more, the power you build or the foundation you build it on?